Mark 1, verse 35. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Solitude, first of all, is a place where we discover our true selves and discard our false selves. Because you need to ask the question periodically, who is the real me? And I want to tell you this morning that you are not who you really are when you're with people. The real you is you when you are completely alone, and the real you is especially you when you're before the face of God.
We live life with very little clarity about who we are. We don't spend enough time in that solitary place that may scare some of us. But that place of quiet, that place of silence, that place of alone, being with God, being with myself, that you and I desperately need. And I know that because Jesus needed it. And if Jesus needed something, you need it even more. It's going to be difficult, it's going to be hard, but just begin to try it. I know what you think, I'm way too busy, I can't squeeze this stuff in, but here's what you see. And I don't have time to go to the verse, but in Luke 5, verse 15, you would see this story where the crowds are literally clamoring around Jesus. They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. His demand is growing. All of this is happening, and yet he's still in the middle of all that. All of that broke away to go to have some silence and solitude. Right? It doesn't matter how busy, because what we do typically is the busier we get, the very first thing that goes is our spiritual disciplines. We get busy, life, work, kids, whatever, get busy. The very first thing to go is our time with God, our reading of the scriptures, our prayer. All that stuff goes out the window when we get busy, but not for Jesus. It was the other way around. It was the anchor of his life.
Jesus frequently felt the need to withdraw and be alone with God. In fact, Luke, in his gospel alone, he records Jesus withdrawing to a solitary place 9 times. Quiet was not peripheral for him, but central, which raises, I think, a really important question. If Jesus felt the need to often withdraw, shouldn't we? Theologian William Barclay said it this way. He says, "It may well be that the whole trouble in our lives is that we give God no opportunity to speak to us, because we do not know how to be still and to listen. We give God no time to recharge us with spiritual energy and strength, because there is no time when we wait upon him. How can we shoulder life's burdens if we have no contact with him who is the Lord of all good life?" With all the noise in our world, we run the great risk of drowning out the only voice that we need to hear the most, and that's God's. I would argue that the greatest threat to Christianity is not hedonism, but distraction.
Dallas Willard called hurry the great enemy of the spiritual life for the modern Western person. The great revivalist of spiritual formation in the American church, Richard Foster, he says, in contemporary society, our adversary, which is a biblical title for Satan, our adversary majors in 3 things: noise, hurry, and crowds. If he can keep us engaged in muchness and manyness, he will rest satisfied. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung took it a step further than that. Hurry is not of the devil. It is the devil. What if a noisy inner life at its core is not the product of our modern, hyper-distracted world, but instead is an ancient and constant tendency to get a step ahead of Jesus, to assume we know where the story is going, and to insist that our spiritual formation move at our pace rather than his?
I would argue, if you are just feeling like I have not grown spiritually, a big part of that could be the pace of life you're living. Michael Zigarelli, professor at Charleston Southern University, did a study on spiritual growth and then what prohibits spiritual growth. And his findings were this: it may be the case that Christians are assimilating to a culture of busyness, hurry, and overload, which leads to God becoming more marginalized in Christians' lives, which leads to a deteriorating relationship with God. Right? His study showed that a stressed, hurried, and tired life will not experience the abundant life God desires for us. Ronald Rolheiser said it this way: pathological busyness, distraction, and restlessness are major roadblocks today on our spiritual lives. So if you feel like you are just not growing spiritually, or that your growth has been stunted, and God seems this is distant, you can't connect, it is very likely that you are running at a pace that is killing your relationship with Jesus. We need to slow down. We need to give God an opportunity to speak into our lives. But yet, so often we run from thing to thing to thing to thing, and then we wonder, like, God, why can't I hear your voice? So we need to stop and sit still before the Lord and let him speak into our lives. It is in these times of solitude, it's in these times of stillness that God can speak, that God can guide and refresh us, but we have to give him the opportunity to do those things.
Imagine it this way. Imagine a marathon runner who's so focused on his time and so obsessed with not stopping that he ignores all the water stations. He thinks, I don't have time to slow down. And then what happens? Well, on mile 14, he starts cramping. By mile 18, he's stumbling. By mile 22, he has to be pulled off the track. And this is what we do spiritually. We think, I don't have time for solitude. I don't have time to slow down. I don't have time to stop. I don't have time to pray. I don't have time to be still. I got to keep running. And then we collapse. And so solitude is not wasting time. It's a water station. It keeps you in the race. And Jesus said yes to solitude.
But what we see in the life and ministry of Jesus is that the busier and the more high profile he became, the more he slipped away to be alone with the Father. We tend to do the opposite, don't we? The busier we are, the more crammed our calendars are, the more in demand we are of other people, that kind of quiet, that kind of solitude, that kind of silence, at least in my life, is often the first thing to go. We remember who we are in Jesus. If we do not take time to be alone with God, other voices will get louder and louder. It is not easy, just to put it out there. It is not easy to practice silence and solitude because there will always be people with needs and demands. Always. But Henry Nouwen says it in a way that I think is so convicting, at least for me. He said, without solitude, it is virtually impossible to live a spiritual life. We do not take the spiritual life seriously if we do not set aside some time to be with God and listen to him.
Solitude is the one time in your day when no one will be expecting anything from you. When you are in solitude with God, he does not make those kinds of demands on you. He simply delights in you, and he longs to be in your presence.
Silence is a reversal of the whole possessing, controlling, grasping dynamic of trying to maintain control of our own existence. Silence is the inner act of letting go. When we use noise to drown out noise, we are dealing with the symptom and not the disease, not the root problem. The path of transformation is learning how to be with our pain, anger, and deepest fears, and let God be with us so that new life can emerge in and through us.
Truth is, whenever our outer world is growing, that's when we need to spend even more attention to our soul and our relationship with God. But that's normally not the common practice, which is what led Dr. Henry Cloud to say, this is the human condition. We ignore our internal life, and as a result, we do not have the outside life that we desire. I love the way that John Ortberg puts it. He says this about our soul: if your soul is healthy, no external circumstance can destroy your life. If your soul is unhealthy, no external circumstance can redeem your life. I love the way Ruth Haley Barton puts it. She says, times of solitude and silence are not times for judging, meaning ourselves. They're not times for judging, they are times for noticing. Solitude is about staying in God's presence with the things that we're noticing about ourselves in the moment. And here's the reality: you may not like everything you notice about yourself in the moment. That's okay, right? The reason you were coming to meet with the Lord is because you need God to do some work in your life and some work in your inner world. You need more of his love and his grace and his perspective and his peace. And so that's why we carve out the time.
Time in solitude reminds us who we really are. That we are not our successes and we are not our production or our accomplishments. Those don't determine our identity. Those aren't the most important things about us. Time in solitude reminds us that we are God's son, we're God's daughter, that he loves us. And it's not about who you impress or how much you accomplish. It's about the fact that you are his. And solitude reminds us of that. Start with 10 minutes. Work your way up. Show up consistently and ask God to meet you there. Start small, very early in the morning while it was still dark. I think there's something powerful about early in the morning, but it doesn't have to be. Like, you can do it during your lunch break, or maybe after the kids go to bed, or maybe on your commute, on your way home from work. Just take 5 or 10 minutes and just say, God, will you meet me here? And just be silent and just be quiet. The Bible says in the book of James, it promises us that when we draw near to God, he'll draw near to us. So just trust that that's going to happen. And it might feel uncomfortable at first, but just keep doing it. Start small, 5 minutes, saying, God, I want to draw near to you. I'm not sure how. I don't even know what that looks like. I want to draw near to you. He will meet you there.
This invitation to silence and solitude, it's not to add one more thing to your list. Instead, it's an invitation to step into the peace and the presence of God and to find your deepest rest and joy in him.
And if you'll say yes to solitude, you'll experience what Jesus experienced. You'll have clarity about what you're supposed to do. And some of you are really looking for that right now. You'll have strength to face what's in front of you. Even when you feel overwhelmed and you're not sure how you're going to pull it off, solitude gives you strength to face what's in front of you. You'll have peace from the pressure of people all around you. You'll find confidence that you're living the life God's called you to. We say yes to solitude. We turn off the noise. We step away from the crowd. We find a solitary place and we meet with the Father.